सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। Hari Om. We are probably into one of the main sections of this text, Vivekachoodamani, and surely the most important topic of Advaita Vedanta, and that is nature of our own self. All the texts that we study, whether they are Shastra Granthas, whether they are Prakarana Granthas, Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, different Prakarana Granthas, Tattvabodh, Atmabodh, Vivekachoodamani, Bhajagovindam, all those texts, or rather any text of spirituality, all of them are intending to explain to us this, what we are studying right now. That is the reason why we started also our spiritual journey, isn't it? We want to know, who am I? Each and every one of us, we are desiring to know this self. What is this self? Who is this self? What is the nature of this self? Is it that what I think to be, or is it something else? So the entire discussion that is going on right now is the main topic. Paramah ka Atma, who is the Supreme Self, right? And in that, you see, actually speaking, are there many selves? No, there is only one self. One self with one nature, so the description should be short. Why so many verses to explain the self? Is it something that it is this also, that also, or it can be that also, or it can be that also? Like we saw previous topic of this, Paramah ka Atma. Before this we saw Kaha asau anatma. And there were lot of discussion, debate, etc. was going on about three types: Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira. Isn't it? So, like that, does the self also have these different kind of things? That's why the description is long? No. Here, the self is one. It is of a very clear nature. But that self being beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, beyond the senses, it is hard, it is difficult to comprehend that self. And therefore, the teacher or the author uses different ways to express, to point out the same self. So different facets are given here, different pointers are given here. We can go by any pointer, we can take use of any expression or explanation to reach this self. So if we remember, in the previous 2 sessions we started the discussion on this topic, and asti kaśchit swayam nityam aham pratyaya lambanah avasthatraya sakshi san panchakosha vilakshanah. Actually, in this verse number 125, everything that is to be known, that is to be explained, that is to be pointed out, is already given. That there is something. Surely it is not shunya, it is not void. There is something. It's a positive presence. What is its nature? Swarupa lakshana. Swayam nityam. It is of the nature of consciousness and existence. Aham pratyaya lambanah. How it is to be known? Through every thought we can know it, because it is the substratum of the I thought. I thought, which is the substratum of all thoughts, this is the substratum of even that I thought. You know Panchakosha? This is, you know Avasthatraya, you know the 3 states of experience, this is the witness of those 3 states. You know Panchakosha, this is something different from Panchakosha. So don't get confused. So through these terms, aham pratyaya lambanah, avasthatraya sakshi, panchakosha vilakshanah, the self is pointed out through tatastha lakshana. We saw this, correct? Now, the author takes one more way to explain, which we saw in the last session. What is that? Self is that which knows everything. Which knows everything means what? All the states of mind. In the Jagrata Avastha, mind is collecting the data. In the dream, in the Swapna Avastha, mind is projecting also and experiencing also. And in the deep sleep, that mind is absent. All these different states of mind, the self knows. Not only he knows, the self witnesses everything. Yah pashyati swayam sarvam. It witnesses everything without getting involved, but yamna pashyati kaśchana. But nothing can see that self. It is nirapeksha drik. It is the ultimate seer which sees everything, but which is not seen by anything else. Yah pashyati sarvam swayam yamna pashyati kaśchana. Does it only see? No. Yah chetayati buddhyadi. That which illumines the mind, etc. Tad yamna chetayati ayam. But that mind cannot illumine the self. Means what? Mind gets the capacity of collecting information, of projecting, because the consciousness comes from the self. So the self illumines the mind, but the mind cannot illumine the self. Yena vishwamidam vyaptam yamna vyapnoti kinchana. That which pervades the entire world, but that which is not pervaded by anything else. There is nothing subtler than the self. There is nothing greater than the self. But it pervades everything. Abharupamidam sarvam yam bhantam anubhati ayam. It is of the nature of shining. Sarvam. All this is of the nature of shining. How? Taking the consciousness of the self, it appears to be shining. Abharupam, reflected shine it is. It's not its own. Just like the glow of the moon, it is not its own light. It is the reflected light of the sun. In the same way, everything is shining because of the light of the consciousness, light of the self, consciousness of the self. Yam bhantam, when that self shines, ayam anubhati. All this also shines. Following the light of which consciousness, everything else shines. On this verse, we had little more reflection. I hope you remember. The sun, the moon, the stars, fire, the electric lights, etc. All these are luminous, but that light is called as jada prakāśa. It is a gross light, inert light, right? Whereas consciousness, the self is what? It is Chaitanya prakāśa. It cannot be seen because anything that is seen is inert. So the sun gets the capacity to give jada prakāśa because the sun is getting the sentiency from the self. If it doesn't get that sentiency, it will not be able to do its own function. Rather, it won't be able to exist. Forget about all other things. Everything in the world exists first because of the self. And then it is able to do its own function because of the self, because it takes the sentiency from the self. This is one of the important points when it comes to understanding Chaitanya Prakāśa, Prakāśa Rupa of the Atma, how the self is self-luminous, right? It does not require any other light. It itself is of the nature of light. Light doesn't mean the white light. Don't immediately imagine all these things. When it is said that the self is of the nature of self-luminous or light, it's not a physical light we are talking about. It is the sentiency, consciousness, Chaitanya Prakāśa that we are talking about. The light that we see is Jada Prakāśa. And all the luminaries are able to give that Jada Prakāśa, inert light, because of sentiency of the self. So, yam bhantam ayam anubhati. When that self shines, when that self has consciousness, everything following the self shines, gives Jada Prakāśa. That is also important point. Now, again the author is taking one more route to point out the self. One more route. Okay. Very, very beautiful shlokas are coming. Let us read. Verse number 129. Yasya sannidhimātreṇa dehendriyamanodhiyaḥ viṣayeṣu svakīyeṣu vartante preritā iva yasya sannidhimātreṇa dehendriyamanodhiyaḥ viṣayeṣu svakīyeṣu vartante preritā iva. Yasya, whose sannidhimātreṇa, by mere presence of whom deha, indriya, manaha, dhiyah, body, senses, mind and intellect, all the upadhis, all the instruments that we have, svakīyeṣu viṣayeṣu, in their respective objects, svakīyeṣu respective, their own, viṣayeṣu in their objects, vartante, they stay, they exist, they remain, preritā iva, as though preritā, as though they are prompted, they are inspired. What is it saying? Deha, body, indriya, senses, manaha, mind, dhiyaha, buddhi, di, plural for all the four together is used, dehendriyamanodhiyaḥ. The body, senses, mind and intellect, they remain in their respective objects, in their corresponding functions, as though prompted yasya sannidhimātreṇa, by whose mere presence all of them do these things, that is the self. See, in all these verses, see verse number 126 onwards, yah sakalam vijanati, 127, yah pashyati, yah chetayati, yena vishwamidam vyaptam, yam bhantam. So the yat sarvanama is used by whose, who, whom, by whom. Now here yasya, whose. All this is used to indicate that self. By whose mere presence all the upadhis engage in their respective functions as though they are inspired, prompted by the self, that is the self. Two things are said here. Number one, who is getting involved in the action? The upadhis, not the self. Carefully note, the self is just present. Yasya sannidhimātreṇa, by whose mere presence all the upadhis get busy in their respective functions. As though the self is prompting them to do. As though. Preritā iva. That word is very important. As though prompted. Now, when we listen to this kind of description, if you have studied Atma Bodha, immediately your mind will go to series of verses. If I am not wrong, 5 verses are there. I think 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 of Atma Bodha. They explain this whole point through different examples. The author is same, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya's text only. There he says, he gives different examples to explain. In one place he says, Atmanam Rajavat Sada Sannidhimātra. This concept of Sannidhimātra is explained by the term Rajavat Sada, like a king. Like how in the presence of king all the functions are happening. It is not that the king is actually doing anything. In our era, for us to understand, you see, if the prime minister is coming to our city or village, immediately all roads, etc., everything becomes perfect, isn't it? It is not that prime minister is asking. He is just coming. That is sufficient for everything. Everything becomes clean and all the garbage is inside the dustbin. Generally, it is outside, Around the dustbin we see garbage. But when prime minister, big person is coming, everything is inside. Why to go very far? When guests are coming to our house, how immediately everything goes at its place, isn't it? There will be one room or one cupboard which you should not open, because all the things are dumped there. But outside, you see. Now, are the guests asking us to do this? Is the prime minister asking? Is the king asking? No. In his mere presence, all these things happen. By whose mere presence these things are happening? When you enter into some company, some office, whether boss is there or not, you immediately know. Why? By looking at the people. If everybody is sitting at their desk and working, you have to understand that the boss is there. Because the moment boss leaves, all of them are on some other person's cubicle and discussing. You know what happened yesterday? I saw one movie. But boss just comes there and sits in the cabin. Everybody is in their own place working. Why? Yasya sannidhimātreṇa, by whose mere presence. It is not that the boss is shouting or anything. Not required. In their mere presence, all the functions happen. This is one aspect. Now, when you say that in their mere presence it happens, what the author wants to communicate is the self is not involved in the functions of the upadhis. Is not involved. That's why the word preritā iva was said. As though they are prompted by the self. It is not that the self is actually prompting anything. Please understand why? Because for the self, upadhis are not there. The self is non-dual, isn't it? One without the second. How will there be upadhis for the self? The self doesn't know. So it is not that the self is actually doing anything. No, it is just there as existence. That is point number one. Okay. So self is different from upadhis, point number one actually. Second point we see here, preritā iva, as though the upadhis are energized by the self. As though the energy is coming from them. Surya lokam yatha janaha, another example from Atmabodha. Isn't it? Like the sun. When the sun rises, everybody starts to do their job. Energized, inspired by the sun. Come on, get up, morning has come, sun has risen, chalo, let us start. As though inspired. So thus, the energy, the capacity given to the upadhis to carry out their function comes from the self. It is not that the self is actually doing anything, but it as though energizes, prompts, inspires upadhis to functions. Point number two. Point number three, sometimes what happens, these activities of the upadhis are wrongly attributed to the self. The self is actually not getting involved. But in the presence of the self, when mind thinks, I say, I am thinking. Careful, see what is happening. In the presence of the self, when the sense organ, eye or ear, gives me the knowledge of the form or sound, I say, I am seeing, I am hearing. What is happening here? The sense organ is doing its job. The body is doing its job. The mind is doing its job. But all these functions that the upadhis are doing are wrongly attributed to the self, as though the self is doing. I am hearing, I am seeing, I am thinking, I am going. You see what happens here? The functions of the upadhis, the qualities of the upadhis are wrongly attributed to the self. To explain this point, verse in Atmabodha is Chalanadi yatha ambhasaha kalpyante bhugate chandre chalanadi yatha ambhasaha. Or another also, dhavan nivayatha shashi. Examples from Atmabodha. When we are going in train, we see that the moon is running with us. Isn't it? When you look outside the window, the moon is also coming. We don't understand that moon is stationary. It is not moving. You are the one who is moving. Or suppose you are stationary, moon is there and there are clouds going past the moon. Then what happens? The movement of the clouds is attributed to the moon and we think that moon is moving. Moon is just there. Clouds are moving. But because of the connection, so-called connection between the clouds and the moon, it appears that the moon is moving. Or when the reflection of that moon happens in the water, when the water moves, we feel that the moon is moving. These are the examples. To say what? That the self doesn't get involved in the action, but the functions of the upadhis are wrongly attributed to the self. So what kind of self it is? In whose mere presence all activities happen. It remains a mere presence. It appears as though it is energizing the upadhis to function. It is also getting wrong attribution of all the actions, but actually it is only present. That is the self, right? So what are the points that we are understanding? Point number one, the self is different from the upadhis. Point number one. Point number two, it as though energizes the upadhis. Point number three, the functions and the qualities of the upadhis are wrongly attributed to the self. Point number 4, it remains untouched, unaffected by any function, quality or changes that are happening in the upadhis. It remains just far. It has no connection with the upadhis. Point number 4, it remains untouched, unaffected by upadhis, their qualities, their changes, modifications, their functions, from everything. It remains untouched. Point number 4. And point number 5, it does not do anything. In its mere presence, everything happens. Yasya sannidhimātreṇa. Okay. All right. Getting the point? So the self is that in whose mere presence all the activities happen, who as though energizes all the upadhis to carry out their functions, who wrongly gets the attribution from the upadhis, their functions, but who remains untouched by upadhis, their functions, their quality, their modifications, changes, everything. It remains untouched. That is the self. That is me. So, what does it mean? See, now reflection has to happen. In the class, only limited things are said. Now, when you sit alone with this verse, then think. What? When the body is getting old, am I getting old? No. Why? Because body is different. I am different. Now, wrongly attributing the qualities of the body to the self, I think I am getting old. Then the panic starts. Then all the things start, no? Grey hair is there, then try to, color it. Wrinkles are there, then try to put more makeup so that the wrinkles are not seen. And show everybody that yes, I am still young. Abhi to main jawan hu. We have to show it to everybody. Why all these things? Because the quality modification of the body is attributed to the self. I am not that. Same way mind. Mind is in good mood today. So what? My mood doesn't change. Why? Because I don't have moods. The mind has moods. Mind will go through good mood, bad mood, happy mood, joy, sorrowful, everything. Let it go through. Let mind go through. Mind is engaged in activity. I am not engaged in activity. Even though right now the class is going on and I am listening, I think that I am listening, but I am not listening. Veji, you are right. I am not listening actually. No, I am not saying like that. I am saying the ears are listening. The mind is collecting the data. The intellect is understanding. I am doing neither of these things. I am not talking about a situation where ears are listening but the mind is not present. Not that way. Ears are listening. Mind is collecting the data. Intellect is processing it, trying to understand it. But I am none of these. And therefore I am not doing any of this. Who am I? I am the one who is only present. Sannidhimātreṇa. In my mere presence, all these things are happening. I am not talking. The speech is talking. Prompted by the mind, backed by the intellect. I am what? I am just there. The moment we understand this, our life will become completely sorted. Why? I cannot get ego. Why? I am not doing only. I am a great orator. Who is great orator? Your speech is a great orator. I am a great thinker. Your intellect is a great thinker. I am a very happy man. Your mind is happy. Who are you? I am just there. I am just there. See? Take the mind or take your attention from the outside world to the mind, and from the mind to the witness, in whose presence all these things are happening. So when you are sitting and watching TV, no interest in what is going on the TV. But you are thinking that, okay, eyes are watching the TV, mind is trying to understand, intellect is trying to process, I am the one who is only present, and you smile. And the person sitting next to you doesn't understand why are you smiling, because nothing on the TV is happening. But why are you smiling? Because you have understood the point. At every moment, this is what we have to do. How much time should I do sadhana? No question. Why? All the time, this is what we have to do. I am doing japa. Who is doing japa? See? The speech is chanting the name of the Lord. The mind is completely focused on the Lord. Intellect is trying to make sure that no other thought is entering. What are you doing? I am just there. I am just there. In my presence, all these things are happening. So I am not the speech which is chanting the name of the Lord. I am not the mind who is remembering the Lord. I am not the intellect which is trying to stop the thoughts. I am that presence. That is me. Okay. Yasya sannidhimātreṇa dehendriyamanodhiyaḥ viṣayeṣu svakīyeṣu vartante preritā iva. Right? This is one wave of thought towards the self. Now, the author uses another way. Let us read verse number 130. ahaṅkārādidehāntā viṣayāśca sukhādayaḥ vedyante ghaṭavadyena nityabodhasvarūpiṇā ahaṅkārādidehāntā viṣayāśca sukhādayaḥ vedyante ghaṭavadyena nityabodhasvarūpiṇā. In the previous shloka, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya tried to explain to us that self is that mere presence, because of whose mere presence everything functions. It doesn't get involved with anything. It looks like it is energizing or inspiring, but actually that is also not true. It is just there. Now that self, which is mere presence, is also of the nature of consciousness, of the nature of knowledge, K capital. Not small k, capital K. What is the difference? Small k knowledge is knowledge of some object which is thought based, which is based on a thought. Capital K knowledge is that consciousness which is not based on any thought. It is a kind of illumination. That's what Shankaracharya explains in this verse. He says, ahaṅkāra adi. Adi beginning with ahaṅkāra, ego. Deha antaha, and ending with body. Means what? From ego up to the gross body. Up to the gross body means what? In between you take everything. Starting from ahaṅkāra means what? You take mind, intellect, then chitta, then all the organs of perception, all the organs of action, all the pranas. And then you come up to body, gross body. So gross body and the subtle body, both the upadhis, viṣayāha cha, and also viṣayāha, objects, the sense objects. So all the upadhis, their objects, and sukhādayaḥ, and all the experiences of joy, etc., sukha joy, of joy, etc., all these things vedyante. Yena vedyante, by whom all these things are known. Vedyante plural. Why? Because the subject of the sentence is all these. ahaṅkārādidehāntā, viṣayeṣu, sukhādayaḥ. All these things are known. Yena, by whom. That is the self. See, vedyante ghaṭavat. Ghaṭavat means what? Like a pot. Like a pot. Like you know the pot. Like that, the self knows upadhis, their objects, their experiences, everything. How come? How come self can know this? nityabodhasvarūpiṇā. Because it is of the swarupa, it is of the nature of nityabodha. Nityabodha, eternal consciousness, eternal knowledge, K capital. Consciousness always C capital, so I don't have to say. But eternal knowledge, K capital. Because the self is of the nature of eternal knowledge. Eternal knowledge means the consciousness that never ceases to exist. The self being of this nature, it knows everything. Now, you see, again, when it is said that the self knows everything, please don't think that it is a thought-based knowledge. Like I know watch, I know table, I know light. Not like that. It is of the nature of consciousness. So it knows everything means what? It is witness to everything. Not a thought-based knowledge. It is more like a illumination. A beautiful example is given in the 10th chapter of Panchadashi. Panchadashi is a set of 15 chapters written by Sri Swami Vidyaranya and his Guru Bharati Tirtha, written by both of them. 15 chapters are put together to make this text called Panchadashi. Name itself says 15 chapters. In that, the 10th chapter is called as Natakadipa Prakarana. The chapter on Natakadipa. Natakadipa means, Nataka means drama, theatre, and Deepa means light. So the theatre lamp, the example of theatre lamp is explained. Means what? There is that big light on the stage, on the theatre, right? Which illumines all the different actors who are taking roles of different characters, different props used. Their expressions, their dance, their singing, everything is illumined by this light. And when all these actors, characters go away, the absence of all of them is also illumined by this light. This light, without changing, illumines everything. In the same way, consciousness, without undergoing any modification, illumines upadhis, their objects, their experiences, everything, their absence also. It is that kind of knowledge that we are talking about, not a thought-based knowledge. So actually, again, how to reflect more on this? When the upadhis are continuously functioning in the world of objects, who am I? I am mere presence, as explained in the previous verse, but I am the one illumining, knowing all these things. Not as a thought-based knowledge, but as consciousness. What it also means is, since the self knows the upadhis, the objects, the experiences, etc., all the upadhis, all the objects, all the experiences are inert. Why? Because they are known. Whatever is known, whatever is seen is inert. Yad drishyam tad jadam. Remember, we had seen this earlier. yaddrishyam tajjadam, yajjadam tannashwaram, yannashwaram tat mithya, yanmithya tada sat. We had seen this complete thought flow. That which is seen is inert. Since the self sees or knows upadhis, their objects, their experiences, all of them are inert. Ahaṅkāra is also inert. Ahaṅkārādidehāntā is said. Starting from ego up to the body, everything is inert. There is only one consciousness, and that is of the self. That is me. Other than me, everything is inert. But Veji, you are consciousness, I am also consciousness, no? There is no concept of you and me. There is only one consciousness. Your body or my body, both are inert, that is okay. The distinction is with respect to body. The distinction is with respect to mind, your mind, my mind. But there is no distinction called as yourself and myself. That is, there is no difference. There is one self. There is one consciousness. No, this is where I don't like Vedanta. All other things are still okay. But, you see, now you are explaining it, then I am understanding myself. You are explaining it as yourself. But there is only one self. So, whether I explain it as myself or yourself, there is one self. Let me think. Why do we think that there are many selves? Because we see many bodies and we think that in each body there is one self. No, that is not what is there. The self is one, like the sun. In different bodies, in different minds, different reflections are happening, but the self is one. In different buckets of water, different reflections of the sun takes place, but the sun is one. I am not the reflection, I am the original sun. I am not the jiva, the reflection of consciousness. I am not the ahaṅkāra, but I am the self, and that self is one. The apparent distinction is because of distinction of the upadhis. So don't again get into that trap. Are you talking about yourself or are you talking about myself? The yourself, myself, there is no concept like that. There is one self. And about that self I am talking, which is the nature of you also and which is the nature of me also. About that self, Bhagavan Shri Adi Shankaracharya is talking about. Okay? So all these upadhis, their objects, their experiences are known by this self. It is the consciousness, the illuminator of all. Right? Let us see now next one that Shankaracharya says. Verse number 131. eṣo'ntarātmā puruṣaḥ purāṇah.
eṣo'ntarātmā puruṣaḥ purāṇah.
nirantarākhaṇḍasukhānubhūtiḥ.
nirantarākhaṇḍasukhānubhūtiḥ.
sadaikarūpaḥ pratibodhamātro.
sadaikarūpaḥ pratibodhamātro.
yeneṣitā vāgasavaścaranti.
yeneṣitā vāgasavaścaranti.
eṣo'ntarātmā puruṣaḥ purāṇah nirantarākhaṇḍasukhānubhūtiḥ. sadaikarūpaḥ pratibodhamātro. yeneṣitā vāgasavaścaranti. Eṣah, this. Antarātmā, this is the inner self. What we are talking about, so actually, if you see all the previous 5 verses, the self is not mentioned. See, carefully see. Yah vijanati, yam pashyati, yam na pashyanti. Yah pashyati, yam na pashyati, yash cetayati, na tat yam cetayati, yena vyaptam, yam vyapnoti, yam bhantam. yasya sannidhimātreṇa, isn't it? Yena vedyante. Now that all kinds of pronouns that conclude here when it is said eṣo'ntarātmā. This is the inner self. Means what? The one that knows everything, illumines everything, but is not illumined by anything. The one that knows, the one in whose presence everything happens. The one that pervades everything, but nothing pervades it. That which knows everything, the objects, the upadhis, the objects and their experiences. That is this inner self. Eṣah, this. Eṣa is the pronoun used for showing the proximity. Sah, that. Eṣah, this. It is not somewhere else, somewhere far. It is close. Not just closer to you, it is you. Antarātmā, it is your innermost self. It is the core of you. Eṣah Antarātmā. That is which is called as puruṣaḥ. Puruṣaḥ. Puruṣaḥ means what? Oh, Veji, it is Purusha. It is male. No. Puruṣaḥ means what? Purnatvat puruṣaḥ. Purnatvat, that is infinite, complete, whole. That is called Purusha. We are not talking here about Purusha and Stri. Not that Purusha we are talking about. We are talking about that Uttama Purusha. What Uttama Purusha? 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Dvavimo Purushau Loke Ksharascha Kshara Evacha Ksharas Sarvani Bhutani Kutastho Kshara Uchyate Uttamah Purushastu Anyah Paramatma iti Udaratah Yo Lokatrayamavisya Vibhartyavyaya. That Purushottama, that Uttama Purusha we are talking about. The self is Purusha. Purusha means what? That which is infinite. One meaning of Purusha is Purnatvat Purushaḥ, infinite. Supreme being, if you want to say in English, Purusha. Another meaning is Purishayanat Purushaḥ. Two ways of understanding word Purusha. Purnatvat Purushaḥ or Purishayanat. Puri means city. In the city of the body, Shayanat, that which stays, that which sleeps, means what? That which is present in our body, means what? That which is me, which we think to be in our body. That is called as Purusha, the self, the supreme being, that innermost self. Purāṇah. eṣo'ntarātmā puruṣaḥ purāṇah. Purāṇah means that which is pura api navaha, that which is ancient, old, yet new. What do you mean by ancient yet new? That which does not undergo any change and therefore it always is new. It is ancient. Ancient means it is before time, beyond time. But because it does not change, every moment it appears new. Purāṇah. It is eternal. That's what it means. eṣo'ntarātmā puruṣaḥ purāṇah nirantarākhaṇḍa sukhānubhūtiḥ. It is of the nature of anubhuti, experience. Experience of what? Sukha. Experience of bliss. Here doesn't mean joy. Why? Akhanda sukha. Akhanda. Khanda means breaking. Khanda means breaks, parts. Akhanda means unbroken, undivided bliss. How? Nirantara, constant. It is of the nature of experience of constant, undivided bliss. Our sukha that we experience through the mind is khandita sukha, is broken joy. Why? Because that joy is broken by the next experience of sorrow. And therefore it is not nirantara, it is not constant. Sometimes happy, sometimes sad. But the self is not like that. It is of the nature of that experience of infinite bliss. permanent happiness, constant undivided bliss. That is the nature of the self. nirantarākhaṇḍasukhānubhūtiḥ, sadaikarūpaḥ. Sadaikarūpaḥ. Sadaikarūpaḥ means what? Sada. Sada means always. Ekarūpaḥ. Ekarūpaḥ means it is same. It is of the same form. It does not change. The body changes, the mind changes, the pranas change, the intellect changes, even the vasanas change, but the self does not change. It is of same nature, changeless. Pratibodhamātro. Matra means, here matra means it is as though it is pratibodha. Pratibodha is a concept which comes from Kenopanishad. In Kenopanishad, when the student asked about what is the nature of this self, the Guru answers it as pratibodha viditam. The self is that which is known through every thought. What we had seen earlier as aham pratyaya lambanaha. It is the substratum of the I thought. So through each and every thought, you can know the self. Prati means through every, and bodha means thought. So pratibodhamātro is that which is known through every thought. Means what? It is the substratum of the thought. It is the witness of the thought. So through every thought, you can know the self. So you are sitting for meditation. Suddenly one thought came. What is the thought? Did I switch off the light? Now hold on to that thought. Don't think whether you switched off the light or not. Think, who is that I who is asking this question, did I switch off the light? Okay. Did I means it is aham vritti. Okay, this is ahaṅkāra, ego. Who is the substratum of that ego? That I thought is based on what? That is the self. So you see, any thought that appears in our mind, through that thought, we can reach the self. That thought becomes a window for us to see the self. Pratibodhamātro. Carefully see. Every single thought, any thought you pick up. You remember a song. It happens. When you are meditating, all kinds of things happen. The song that you have not sang or heard for years together, you will remember in meditation. Now ask the question, who is remembering this song? I. Who is this I? The I thought. Who is the substratum of this I thought? The self. So through every thought, you can reach to the substratum self. Pratibodhamātro, that which is known, which can be known through every single thought. Yena, by whom eṣitā ruled, controlled, governed by whom vak means speech. Asavaha means asu means prana, asavaha plural, pranas. Charanti, they function. Ruled or governed by whom? Vak is upalakshana for all the karmendriyas, and pranas, also another faculty that acts. All of them charanti, they act. Ruled by whom? By this eṣo'ntarātmā. This is the self. Ruled by whom the speech and the pranas act. Ruled by whom? Governed by whom? Means what? Again, don't immediately imagine that ruled means okay, he is calling all the all the organs of action and pranas come. Let me tell you, today your job is this, your job is no. Yasya sannidhimātreṇa, in whose mere presence all of them are doing their functions. It's not that he is taking some meeting and giving them tasks and then taking their updates. Not that kind of Isha, not that kind of ruler he is. He is just there in his mere presence. Everything is happening. That is the self. eṣo'ntarātmā puruṣaḥ purāṇah nirantarākhaṇḍasukhānubhūtiḥ sadaikarūpaḥ pratibodhamātro yeneṣitā vāgasavaścaranti. Now carefully, if we see here, words like purāṇo, sadaikarūpaḥ, they indicate sat aspect of the self. Sat aspect, sat existence. Why? Because purāṇa is eternal. That which is ancient yet new means what? That which is always there. Sat, existence. Terms like pratibodhamātro, etc. They explain, they indicate chit aspect, consciousness aspect. And nirantarākhaṇḍasukhānubhūtiḥ, of course, explains ananda aspect. You can also look at it from other angle and say that pratibodhamātro is tatastha lakshana. Through the thought, the self is pointed out. Yeneṣitā vāgasavaścaranti is tatastha lakshana. Through the senses, through the speech and the pranas, the self is pointed out, who is the ruler of these senses and pranas. You can understand it in different ways, but that is how the self is. Right? Bhagavan Shankaracharya continues, where is this self? What kind of question is this? Where is this self? The self is everywhere, no? Correct. That is true. But if self is everywhere, where to find? If it is everywhere, you can find it anywhere. But tell us one place, no, where I can find. Next verse number 132. Atraiva sattvātmani dhīguhāyāṃ.
Atraiva sattvātmani dhīguhāyāṃ.
Avyākṛtākāśa uśatprakāśaḥ.
Avyākṛtākāśa uśatprakāśaḥ.
ākāśa uccairavivat prakāśate.
Ākāśa uccairavivat prakāśate.
Svakīyeṣu vishvamidam prakāśayan.
Svakīyeṣu vishvamidam prakāśayan.
atraiva sattvātmani dhīguhāyāṃ avyākṛtākāśa uśatprakāśaḥ. ākāśa uccairavivat prakāśate. Svatejaśa vishvamidam prakāśayan. Atraiva. Why are you asking the question where to find the self? Where should I go? Atraiva, here itself. Here itself means atraiva sattvātmani. In sattvic mind, here atma means mind. Sattvātmani, atmani means in the mind. In the mind which is sattvic, which is pure, which is calm. Here itself in the pure and calm mind, dhīguhāyāṃ, in the cave of the intellect, Dhi, buddhi, intellect. Guha, cave. Guhāyāṃ, in the cave, Saptami Vibhakti. Here itself in the pure, calm mind, in the cave of the intellect, avyākṛtākāśa. There is A there. Avyākṛtākāśa uśatprakāśa. But because the next word starts with U, therefore that ekara is dropped. Therefore, it is written as avyākṛtākāśa uśatprakāśa. There is a akáśa is there. See, otherwise that a and uśatprakāśa will join together, no? Then it should have been avyākṛtākāśośatprakāśa. How can a and u be there in front of each other? No, there is something in between which is not seen. Okay, so avyākṛtākāśa. Akáśa means in the space. Avyākṛta in an unmanifest space. Unmanifest. That which has not become manifest. That which has not come to experience. Avyākṛtākāśa, in an unmanifest space, or in the space of the unmanifest. You can understand it as prathama tat purush or shashti tat purush. Karmadhara or shashti tat purush. Anyways, you can understand that samasa. Avyākṛtākāśa, in the space that is of unmanifest or in the unmanifest space. Uśatprakāśaḥ, it is uśatprakāśa. Prakāśa means it is light. Uśatprakāśa means it is of brilliant, captivating splendor is this self. Many things are said here, carefully if we notice. One thing is that the self is everywhere, no doubt. But where am I to find it? In one's own heart. Different explanations are given here to point out that heart. Now that heart which is spoken of in spirituality is not the blood pumping heart which is a part of physical body which the doctors can see. We are not talking about that heart. We are talking about spiritual heart center. The center of the core of our personality we are talking about. Now to indicate that, it is said that it is in the sattvic mind, it is in the cave of the intellect, it is in the space of unmanifest. All of that put together, it is present in your core. It is present in your core means what? It is you. So the self that I have been trying to understand, I have been trying to explain, Shankaracharya is trying to explain, is not to be searched somewhere else. We have to turn within and experience the self in us. It is not present somewhere where I have to reach and experience it. It is present in our own core, in the space of our own heart. But for that experience, what is required? Sattvātmani. The mind should be sattvic, mind should be pure, mind should be calm. We should be able to give up everything of the world and completely turn within. Then in that space which is of unmanifest, where there is nothing, there we can experience the self. Question. What? It is inside. And it is also said cave of intellect. There will be a lot of darkness, no? uśatprakāśaḥ. The self is of the nature of consciousness. So when you reach there, you don't have to be told, you see this is consciousness. No, not required. Nobody needs to tell you that now you have reached. You will know that you have reached. Why? uśatprakāśaḥ. It is self-luminous. It shows itself to you. You don't have to search for it when you reach there. uśatprakāśaḥ. Beautiful. You see how Shankaracharya is using these words. It's unimaginable. He is explaining all these things. This is very, very, very extremely subtle, which is beyond mind and intellect, something that we cannot even explain, nor can we understand, nor can we imagine. But through these simple pointers, he is trying to show us what this self is. sattvātmani dhīguhāyāṃ avyākṛta ākāśe uśatprakāśaḥ. That is the self. Now that self, ravivat, like the sun, ākāśe uccaihi prakāśate. Again there you see ākāśe uccaihi in the second line. Just like here avyākṛta ākāśe uśatprakāśaḥ was there, that A was dropped because of sandhi. Similarly here also ākāśe, in the sky. Now here we are not talking about the space of in the heart. We are talking about ākāśe uccaihi ākāśe. High in the sky. High in the sky, what is there? Ravivat, like the sun, prakāśate, like the sun shines high in the sky, the self shines inside our heart space. So in the physical space or physical sky, the sun is shining. In the space of the heart, the self is shining. Both are similar. Why? Because both are self-luminous. What is the difference? The sun has jada prakāśa. self as Chaitanya Prakasha. That way they are different, but both have similar quality of self-luminous. And not only they shine, but what happens? Swatejasa, by its own light, it shines by its own light, but by its own light, Vishwamidam Prakashayan, the sun also illumines the entire world. Vishwamidam, this world. So, Uchchaihi Akashe Ravivat Prakashati. It shines high in the sky like the sun, but by its own light, Swatejasa, Idam Vishwam Prakashayan, it also illumines the entire world in the same way. This is example, Ravivat, like the sun. Like that, the self shines in the space of the heart by its own light, but it also illumines body, senses, pranas, mind, intellect, everything. Not only the upadhis, but even the outer world, even the sun is finally illumined by this self, this consciousness. That is me. That which is present everywhere, but which can be experienced in the space of one's own heart. That is the self. We don't have to go anywhere. We just have to turn inward, purify our mind, and we will be able to experience the self in our own heart. Okay, that is the self. Some more pointers, 4 more verses to explain this concept, we will see in the next session. Please make sure that you are allowing yourself to reflect on these verses. Just listening is not sufficient. Later on, you have to take the book, read the commentary, you have to see the notes, and then think, what is the implication of this verse? What does it mean? Where am I going wrong in my spiritual journey? Then only that knowledge will become experience. Otherwise, it will just remain some information. Please give yourself time to go through these verses again. Alright? Sure. Let us conclude. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.